you are ready, Bruce, let me introduce you, please, briefly. Bruce Johnson is retired in Ithaca, New York, after 35 years in Colorado and a variety of careers. Favorite career was in psychiatric nursing, working with adolescents at the State Hospital for Mental Health. He started reading the Urantia book in 1969, but only more recently has he found his extroverted side to actually get involved with the Urantia book community. He attends a local Urantia book study group, contributed to 2 science symposiums, and regularly presents courses with UBIS. In recent years, he finds enjoyment assisting with burials at a natural burial cemetery. Plus facilitates a weekly fixers group that helps people repair broken lamps, chairs, toasters, etc. Thank you, Bruce. Go ahead. Thank you very much.
Hi, Jeannie. Thank you. It's great to be here. Can you hear me all right? You can hear me okay? Good. Thank you, Evangela.
Yeah. We can hear you well, Bruce.
Hi, Ralph. Good. I wanted to take this chance to share with you some ideas about something I think we all have in common, and that is the desire to share the Urantia book with others. And I'm interested in what kind of attitude, before I run out the door to share the good news of the Urantia book, what kind of attitude am I going to bring along with me? And I've noticed my attitude has changed a little bit from decade to decade. And I just wanted to look at the 4 things in particular to share with you. And then we can get your ideas about sharing the Urantia book also related to it. So the 4 things that I wanted to look at is expectations. How attached am I, or are we, to a particular expectation that we're trying to achieve? How attached to the outcome of our work. The second is how do we feel about our role in teamwork? Most likely you're going to be involved with other people trying to share the Urantia book. And the third is a couple of role model cases out of the Urantia book that demonstrate successful attitudes and things that didn't quite work out so well due to types of attitudes. And then the last thing that I wanted to get to, which I'm struggling with lately, but shifting towards, and that is how to embrace slow change during these very critical times that we happen to be alive. For years, I thought the Urantia book has got to get out there in any way possible right away, yesterday. But that hasn't happened quickly. And I'm wondering if I can embrace slow change. And in fact, maybe a slow change, a wiser path for the future of the Urantia book. So I'll go quickly through these 4 things. On expectations, an example is I was talking to my older and wiser brother recently, and he says, you know, I think I've come to the idea that anything worthwhile, truly worthwhile doing in this life is probably going to take more than one lifetime. And I thought, maybe my brother has started reading the Urantia book after 45 years. But no, it was just some philosophy that sounds kind of like things from the Urantia book. None of my family members have embraced the Urantia book, and very few close friends, although I think they're all open-minded, spiritual type people. But that's an expectation, an example of a personal expectation that I'm trying to let go of. For example, of freeing up my attitude a little bit. I want to bring up an example of out of the Urantia book of Adam and Eve and their expectations, some things about their attitude that it turns out it didn't work out so well. And I'll read you just a little bit about Adam and Eve. It says, for the first 7 years, they had the benefit of the Melchizedek receivers to advise them on their giant job. And it's, as you know, we were an isolated planet before Adam and Eve got here. It was a tough job. The Urantia book says probably no material sons on Nebadon were ever faced with such a difficult and seemingly hopeless task as confronted Adam and Eve in the sorry plight of Urantia. But they would have sometime met with success had they been more far-seeing and patient. They were not willing to settle down to the long endurance test. They wanted to see immediate results, and they did. But the results thus secured proved to be most disastrous, both to themselves and to their world. So that's an example of a big job to do, high expectations, but they became impatient, and it didn't work out too well. I've spent on my own attitude, an example of the first half of my life, at least, my attitude was I expected to change people's attitude to correct it more towards my way of thinking. And you can put a lot of energy into that. I got my thinking turned on that a little bit when a good friend told me a few years back, another older and wiser friend. He says, I don't know if I've learned anything in this lifetime except maybe one thing. And that is, not everybody sees the world as I do, and that's okay. And I thought that that's all you've learned in life is not everybody sees. It seemed pretty obvious. But it's the that's okay part that gradually has sunk into me, that can I accept other people's different opinions about things? And maybe that's in a way honoring free will too. So I experimented trying to let go of trying to control the outcome of jobs or changing people's attitudes. And when I can do that, it lightens my load on my shoulders a little bit. And I find instead of trying to direct the course of events, that it feels more like you're on an adventure that you don't know where it's going. Oftentimes, by dropping my own expectations, something I never thought of happening, even better happens. And so instead of trying to steer things, a goal in a particular direction, I try to shift towards, gee, I wonder what's around the next corner that I'm going to discover and learn. And that's just another example of trying to shift your attitude and take a look at your own expectations, I guess is what these are just my own examples, but it's worthwhile looking at how you view these things, I think. There was, I've lost a page here, I'm afraid. No. I did lose a page. There it is. Here it is. Sorry. I wanted to shift to talk about teamwork now. The second thing from expectations. Teamwork is something Ralph just talked about it recently, how important it is. Urantia book has some interesting ideas. But if you're going to be part of a team, usually there's leadership involved. And I just like this part. The Urantia book says that leadership is vital to progress, but the quantity of such wise leadership has never exceeded 1% of the population. And that to me is pretty stunning that it's wise leadership is so rare. And my role, I don't want to be a leader, and I don't think I have the qualities, but at least I could be a good member of a team, I'd like to think. And being a member of a team has not been easy. In my history, I was more of a, wasn't brought up playing Little League baseball or going to churches and things. And my independent streak kept me from working with other people in many ways. I didn't want to. And it was through my 20s, I isolated and lived in an old log cabin in Colorado and just avoided being a part of a constructive member society, so to speak. I found the Urantia book during that time, though, and luckily it kicked into where I felt there's you want to get involved in a meaningful way with other people in this life. That became kind of a goal. So I moved to Denver and I'd gotten married, and I went to nursing school in my 30s as a way to develop a meaningful connection with other people. I wanted to share a couple lessons about attitude that I learned in nursing school. One, just before you graduate nursing school, they make you take a 6-week course called Reality Shock. And it gives you a heads up that you've spent a few years learning proper nursing procedure and theory and skills. But the reality is after you've learned these things and you find a position in the nursing world, most likely you're going to be let down. All the expectations to be a perfect nurse are going to be hard to fulfill under job conditions out there. And I found that quickly to be true. My first job, I was working as a psychiatric nurse with adolescents at the state hospital. And after about a year, I became, I disagreed with the way that a lot of the approach that the unit was being run. It didn't follow the things I learned in school, so to speak. And so I went to the head nurse and I said, I've decided to leave this job and find one that suits me better because of these things. And she said, Bruce, I was just that way, just like you. But these days, instead of jumping from job to job, I've decided to try to change things from the inside. And at that point, that was a novel shift in attitude for me. I ended up staying at that job another 6 years and learned to embrace teamwork quite a bit more. Teamwork also seems to be inevitable, even for a loner type of person like me. There's a quote in the Urantia book that says, one of the most important lessons to be learned during your mortal career is teamwork. Few are the duties in the universe of the lone servant. And that I used to admire the solitary messengers, and I thought, boy, I'd like to be one of those solitary messengers and just be by myself and travel space and drop off a message. But that was, I've outgrown that urge. On teamwork, I think Ralph brought this up earlier. A social group of human beings in coordinated work harmony stand for a force far greater than the simple sum of their parts. So that teamwork is more powerful than the individuals apart. We know that quote from the Urantia book. So I'll move on. That was how are your expectations, and how do you see your role in teamwork? And the third is just a couple role model examples more from the Urantia book that I wanted to bring up. One of my favorites is Van and Amadon, who were they were part of the original Planetary Princes inner circle 500,000 years ago. And as we know, for about 300,000 years, they worked to slowly evolve the primal nature of we evolving humans. When the rebellion happened 200,000 years ago, all direction pretty much left the planet, and Van and Amadon were when the only beings left here that hadn't rebelled. And they kept kind of the spiritual awareness, knowledge alive. They knew that Adam and Eve were going to come over time, but it was many thousands of years that Van and Amadon toiled away, and they kept some groups spiritually enlightened as much as possible all that time until Adam and Eve got here. And so when I read in the Urantia book, I think, well, if I was there at that time, I would have done this or I would have done that. Well, I don't think I would have volunteered to be Amadon, to be here for hundreds of thousands of years, slowly evolving our human, we future spiritual beings. On sharing the religious teachings, the Urantia book talks about Symboyton and the Urantia lectures that Jesus was involved with. You might be familiar with those when he was a caravan conductor, and he spent some time in Urantia where they had this school where they had brought in religious leaders from all the regional religions, and their common goal was to find the real meaningful spiritual truths that they shared, and to that no one religion was better than another. And this was quite a vibrant school. And Jesus gave a series of lectures at this school. And there's a few pages in the Urantia book that goes over those lectures. They're very substantial talks, examples of Jesus's philosophy. But the school ran into trouble when Symboyton died. And by the way, Symboyton never revealed his own religious beliefs, yet he sponsored this school, all those, for quite a few years. The school got in trouble a few years after Symboyton died, and his son appealed to Abner of Philadelphia, who had a budding Christian religion was starting by that point. And he asked Abner to send a couple of spiritual teachers to the Urantia school. The Urantia book says, but Abner's choice of teachers was most unfortunate in that they turned out to be unyielding and uncompromising. These teachers sought to make their religion dominant over other beliefs. So after 5 years, confusion increased among the faculty at the school, and it fell apart. The Urantia book says, an observation, the repercussions of Jesus's teachings would have been much greater if the later Christian teachers who joined the Urantia faculty had exhibited more wisdom and exercised more tolerance. So that's a long way around it. An example of more tolerance is helpful in the long run. It could have made quite a difference. We have Jesus, of course, is our ultimate role model, and many things about his attitude are impressive. One that I like is this business of when he talks about my hour has not yet come, or my hour has come. The Urantia book says regarding Jesus, his courage was equaled only by his patience. And when pressed to act prematurely, he would only reply, my hour has not yet come. He was never in a hurry, and his composure was sublime. Those are qualities of attitude that just really I admire so much. About a little more, another example was when Melchizedek instructed some of his followers. This was well before Jesus's time, but Melchizedek warned his followers, it has often been the error of the teachers of new truth to attempt too much, to attempt to supplant slow evolution by sudden revolution. And it says, the missionaries in Mesopotamia attempted too much, and their noble cause went down in defeat. They became entangled in the apparently worthy cause of reforming the mores, the social mores, and thus was their great mission sidetracked and virtually lost in frustration and oblivion. So there's an example of some teachers that got sidetracked and didn't work out. It's just one more example. The Egyptian ruler Akhenaten, some of you may be familiar with, that he had a amazingly clear concept of the revealed religion of Salem. Akhenaten was very strong in his religious concepts, and he, when he took over, his religious, well, I'll read you this quote. And had he manifested a political genius to match his surprising religious leadership, then would Egypt have become the great monotheistic nation of that age. So he went so fast, he built a whole new town. He tried to create all new art and all new literature for everyone. He just, it says he just tried to do too much. And after he died, it couldn't stand. But there's these examples in our history that would have really changed the direction of spiritual growth on the planet. So those are just the three parts about attitude that are interesting to me. How you look at your expectations. I'm thinking that that you do maybe a self-assessment on these things too, is what I would hope. How do I look at attachment to a particular expectation? Who's what role models do I learn from, and how do I look at my involvement with teamwork? All this brings up to what I really wanted to talk to you about today, and that is how to embrace slow change during these very critical times on the planet today. And we're all here in the middle of some very rapidly changing times. I just wanted to bring in this quote from the Urantia book. They refer to the 20th century and the challenge that we're having. And they say, the great danger to any civilization at any one moment is the threat of breakdown during the time of transition from the established methods of the past to those new and better, but untried procedures of the future. The rapidly expanding culture of the 20th century is plunging forward under the force of the accumulated momentum of all ages through which civilization has struggled. And that's the very end of paper 81, which is called The Development of Modern Civilization. So they're sending us a message that we are in this period of transition right now, which we have a heightened sense of, I think. But there's some caution from the Urantia book. In italics, they say, no great social or economic change should be attempted suddenly. Time is essential to all types of human adjustment, physical, social, economic. Only moral or spiritual adjustments can be made on the spur of a moment, but even these require the passing of time for full outworking. Couple Urantia motto things. Impatience is a spirit poison. Anger is like a stone hurled in a hornet's nest. And then the short but sweet, life is but a day's work. Do it well. I like that one quite a bit. We're all here. I'd like to, you've heard enough of my opinions about attitude towards sharing the Urantia book, but I am very interested in ideas that you may have. The idea of whether to get out, and the Urantia book is slowly getting worked into our culture, and are we impatient with that, or maybe that's by design? So I'm not sure how to moderate this, Jeannie, but if anyone has some thoughts in these areas about their own attitude, embracing slow change, I'd really like to hear your ideas.
David, go ahead. David, you raise your hand. Cecilia.
Hello, yeah, hi, thank you. Yeah, I just want to share something from the Urantia book, which is I always found interesting, and it's from, you might know it, it's Why Do the Heathen Rage? Does anyone remember that bit? I'm sure many of you do. And it said, you should all recall how the psalmist spoke of these times, saying, why do the heathen rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers of the people take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break the bonds of mercy asunder, and let us cast away the cords of love. Today you see this fulfilled before your eyes, but you shall not see the remainder of the psalmist's prophecy fulfilled. For he entertained erroneous ideas about the Son of Man, his mission on earth. My kingdom is founded on love, proclaimed in mercy and established by unselfish service. My Father does not sit in heaven laughing in derision at the heathen. He is not wrathful in his great displeasure. True is the promise that the Son shall have those so-called heathen, in reality his ignorant and untaught brethren, or children, for an inheritance, and I will receive these Gentiles with open arms of mercy and affection. All this loving kindness shall be shown the so-called heathen, notwithstanding the unfortunate declaration of the record which intimates that the triumphant Son shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them to pieces like a potter's vessel. The psalmist exhorted you to serve the Lord with fear. I bid you enter the exalted privileges of divine sonship by faith. He commands you to rejoice with trembling. I bid you rejoice with assurance. He says, kiss the Son, lest you be angry and you perish when his wrath is kindled. But you who have lived with me well know that anger and wrath are not part of the establishment of the kingdom of heaven in the hearts of men. But the psalmist did glimpse the true light when in finishing this exhortation he said, blessed are they who put their trust in this Son. The heathen are not without excuse when they rage at us, because their outlook is small and narrow, and they are able to concentrate their energies enthusiastically. Their goal is near and more or less visible, wherefore do they strive with valiant and effective execution. You who have professed entrance into the kingdom of heaven are altogether too vacillating and indefinite in your teaching conduct. The heathen strike directly for their objectives. You are guilty of too much chronic yearning. If you desire to enter the kingdom, why do you not take it by spiritual assault, even as the heathen take a city they lay siege to? You are hardly worthy of the kingdom when your service consists so largely in an attitude of regretting the past, whining over the present, and vainly hoping for the future. Why do the heathen rage? Because they know not the truth. Why do you languish in futile yearning? Because you obey not the truth. Cease your useless yearning and go forth bravely doing that which concerns the establishment of the kingdom.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just one other thing with Moses. Moses is obviously the matchless Moses in Urantia. And Moses was a very powerful leader. He was also very dramatic in his appeal and approach to the people. And he could tell a story to the people which went into their emotions, but also started to turn the wheels of their minds in new directions. And I personally have been interested in Moses myself because of Moses' influence with everybody around me. It seems like Moses is actually more dominant than Jesus. And so I'm trying to figure out what it is about Moses. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, David. Cecilia.
There was a group of us, small group of women that got together and were looking at focusing weekly on impatient, or not on patient values. And one of us chose impatience and was working on it and sharing about that and her difficulties. And it was really interesting because I ignored impatience because it's very hard to work on. And what Bruce, you were saying that Van and Amadon, think how long they had patience. They hung in there. It's just unreal to think of how many years that was. And we expect to be patient for maybe a week or something. And there's a very big gap between what they did and what we are trying to do. And we live in a world that's, of course, so instantaneous. You know, it's even harder for us to imagine that it may be maybe more than one lifetime that these things have to happen in. And so I'm going to go back to working on my patience, just to remember that my impatience is sort of impertinent, you know, in a way, because I'm thinking that my thought that it should happen, just like you were sharing it, that that is about my thinking that my is better than the cosmos, you know. Yeah, so part of impatience might be letting go of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. Kurt, go ahead, please.
Well, I really enjoyed the topic, Bruce. I think that spreading the teachings of the Urantia book is what many of us are trying to do. That I've been working on a ministry for many years, and I've been involved in trying to learn as much as I can and come up with the best thing that I can come up with. But what I've discovered is that I don't have all the skills that it takes in order to do this. And when you talked about teamwork, that really struck me as being central to what we have to learn how to do. We often joke that we're like herding cats, and it's about time we learned how to get herded together and start working together. For example, with my ministry, I've kind of identified that working in social media and presenting ideas of the central core of the Urantia book truths is something that would take many different kinds of skills. Number one, you got to have the finances to do it. You have to have people that can collect the money, that know how to fundraise, that know how to account for things, how to best spend it. We want to create media, then it takes people that can do video work, can do production, can have music composers and musicians and producers. We need lawyers to set up the organizations that are required to do this kind of work. It goes on and on. Writers, people that have expert in social media, advertising. And you know what? We have all those skills in our movement, but we haven't yet come together to do it. And the one thing that I would encourage us is, one of my goals is to try and bring us together, all the people that have all the vision, the skills, the talents, and pick central projects that are specifically targeted at giving the world what it needs now in the wisest way possible. So I'd like to hear what all the rest of you have to say about that. Thanks.
If I could butt in.
Hey.
How many people here, raise your hands, have checked at their local library if there's a Urantia book? And the next town over, and the next town over. If we all took maybe, I think we all know the book finds us. And if we get that book out there, now that they're so affordable, put them in the doctor's office, put them in the dentist's waiting room, put them in libraries, put them on a table at Starbucks. Just, make that the Mormons, they give, what is it, 10% of their income back to the church. So if we just can buy books and get them out there and leave it to I'm not saying not to speak to people, but let the midwayers help people get to the books. Let's get the books out there. More and more books. That's me. When I travel the world, I just gave one to the library in Tahiti that didn't have one at the French Polynesian University. The library in Easter Island. Whenever you travel, take one with you, put it in that library. That's my mission, is to put books in as many libraries as I possibly can. Amen.
Amen. John, can you speak now? John Hales. Okay.
John has to unmute. Can you unmute, John?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My pointer remuted me without my knowing. Anyway, Bruce, thank you very much for your presentation. It was and sharing your frustration of how to be of effective service. At the risk of being seen as a heretic, I finally woke up 5 years ago after being diagnosed with prostate cancer, saying, well, what am I going to do for maybe the brief time I have left on the planet? So I had these grandiose ideas. I'd go to every Urantia conference. I'd visit study groups all over the country. And I woke up one morning and a little voice said, your church, John, your church. I've gone to this church all my life because I like to sing hymns, because that's the way I worship. Never got involved in the church, never got involved with any of the committees, what have you. I just attended and sang hymns. Well, when I made the decision, I know my guardian angels paved the way, because within a month, I was on the usher corps, I was on the care guild, I was baking cookies for my men's coffee group. I mean, it was really quite an amazing thing. Now, I made a decision I would never physically bring the Urantia book into the church. Now, you may think that's odd, but what I realized is that Christians want to know about Jesus. They don't want to know about the central universe. They don't want to know about the local universe. They just want to know about Jesus, because there is confusion. And I didn't realize this, because now I realize I didn't know much about Christianity. They don't even know they don't even agree on who the apostles are. I thought that was common knowledge. There are 12 apostles and we know their names. Each of the 4 gospels list different names for apostles. Some agree, some don't agree. So then the other thing was, well, John, how are you going to talk to them about Urantia concepts if you don't have the book? Well, I bet you everybody on this call, almost everybody, knows they can speak their truth, their personal truth, which is totally influenced by what you've been reading for years. And once I committed to that, I tell you, Jesus speaks. I mean, he'll give you the words. He'll give you the words. I always preface myself by saying, here's what I've learned, and then I share. I'm not telling them to believe it. I'm just telling them here's what I've learned over my 70 years, 80 years. And that starts a conversation. So now I've reached the point where I can easily send snippets of the Urantia book. I use the Truth Book copy because it has pictures, and they love the pictures. And I acknowledge it. It's from the Urantia book, so I'm not hiding it. So they all know I have this interest in this Urantia book. But they know me, so they don't. So I'm saying that in all your cases where you're trying to figure out some big grandiose scheme, there's a place to be of service within probably 10 blocks of your house. And then you can speak your truth, and amazing things will happen. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Chaplain Saturn. Can you speak?
Jeannie, did someone had their hand up? I thought.
Yes. David, so go ahead, please.
Yeah, John Hales. Yeah, known you for many decades. So good to see you. Yeah, I've heard you share this story a number of times. You know, I had the Mormons come to my house and I welcomed them in. And I let them know that I'm not interested in joining them, but I really do enjoy their company. They're wonderful people. Well, they invited me to their temple and I went. And well, they've been over to my house a half a dozen times or whatnot. But, and I've read the Book of Mormon several times. But one thing that the Mormons will let you do, I don't belong to their church. I don't belong to their organization, but they don't have a regular pastor. It's like, they have like senior fellows, but anyone can get up in front of the congregation and talk. And that's exactly what I do. And I read the Urantia book differently now. When I'm reading things about the thought adjuster and any of those concepts that are unique to the to the Urantia book, I'm reinterpreting it in a context that is not Urantian. Okay, use a different concept for the thought adjuster. You know, that spirit fragment, or that spirit. What's the word I'm looking for? Spark that resides in the minds of men, which is how Paul referred to it. Anyway, I do the same thing. I met some. Volunteer for the local food co-op, and there was a street fair, and I was at the table at the street fair, and I got walking by another person that was at the street fair, and it was the Baha'i community. And they gave me some, I've heard of Baha'i, but I wasn't familiar with them. So I got chatting with them and whatnot. So anyway, started meeting with the Baha'i people. You can share all the concepts from they're very open, they're ecumenical. They believe in all different religions, that they're all correct. So yeah, I understand completely what you're doing with getting back into the churches. It's something that all of us Urantians really struggle with, is how to, well, I think we all do the same thing, as how to share the Urantia book. And it's great to do that. It's wonderful when somebody embraces the Urantia book. But in the meantime, it seems that we have to exercise our souls in patience, and just planting seeds is fine with me. And I think it's fine with Jesus. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Christina, go ahead, please.
Recently, I became a prayer chaplain for the Unity Spiritual Center, and Unity is one of the New Thought churches. And we were trained that basically listen some more, and then listen. And then you say, shall we pray? And you use the words that the person used, and then your own spirit guidance to come up with the prayer. And I also learned that we're to keep whatever story or pain that the person has shared with us in complete confidence. And right now, I think one of the most difficult things to do is to listen, to truly hear what the other person is hurting about, and then to help reflect back to them using their own words what they have just said about their own truth, and trusting that their own guidance is helping them. And by doing this, not just with the Urantia book readers, but with anybody in my life, I feel like it is one of the greatest gifts that they trust me with their story, and that I have the honor of helping them to connect with God even closer, and maybe to widen their perspective on whatever their situation is, to include all the spiritual help that they have, that they might have forgotten that they have. And so I think one of the most important things we can do right now is listen.
Thank you, Christina. Pablo, go ahead, please.
Well, we have a difficult situation in our planet right now. And of course, even when it is normal that most persons react to such pressures looking for God's help, it is not the case for the Urantia readers. For us, the first source and center is an ever-present presence in a loving Father. The knowledge about the fact and the feeling by the value that each one of us is indwelled by one pre-personal fragment, an absolute spiritual focal entity, which is the Father gift to us, his little mortal creatures. It gives us an amazing advantage. It's a ratification of our faith, a validation for our understood feeling, and a confirmation of our cosmic insight. When our mind has reached the proper function of the wisdom needed to make a moral choice, we are then circuited to the Holy Spirit to elevate our thoughts. And the Spirit of Truth starts his revelation activities, the Creator's own influence in our own mind. The thought adjuster arrives, and then the pilot light at the center of our mind causes that our potential of immortality results in an actualized fact, the birth of our soul. We are just living the first day in our cosmic kindergarten. Therefore, even when we don't understand some things that happen around us, we feel that we are taking care in our more essential mission to live experiences, while trying to understand the meaning of some values that are being fostered and promoted by the divine monitor. When we interact in our daily relationships and with the external environment, we materialize that relations in facts, and therefore our souls evolves. Our personality is always looking for unification. Therefore, when our mind makes the proper relation between a value and its meaning, our soul grows in quality, and a new function or reaction is available for us to use. Now, when we, using our will, take the decision to use that function and do it, making it real in an experiences, then our soul grows quantitatively. So in resume, we will be facing different situations and challenges during our lifetime, all of which are, from the cosmic human perspective, just opportunities to realize the spiritual values as we intellectually understand them and are able and willing to materialize them in a meaningful action or reaction with our brothers and sisters that share with us their life in this place, in the time where we
Pablo,
make something.
can you hear me?
Thank you.
Thank you. Marian, do you want to speak?
Just a very quick note, since we've all probably been visited by the Mormon missionaries, and I'm very familiar, having read all their texts. In it, Joseph Smith, who I don't believe was a prophet, but nevertheless, he said more revelation will be forthcoming. So when they knock on my door, I say to them, yes, I'm very familiar with your books. And Joseph Smith said, more revelation is forthcoming. And of course, I always keep the Urantia book right on my entry table. And I say, and here it is. And it just, like, they take it in their hands. I end up being a missionary to them. And they know that they're not going to try and convert me, but they start to look through it. And I tell them, this has a complete life and teachings of Jesus. And I think, you're planting a seed. I don't know. They haven't blacklisted me yet. So anyway, it's just a term that is in their doctrine. Joseph Smith said, more revelation will be forthcoming. So, amen.
Great. Amen. Thank you. Anyone else? I would like to ask you, where are you, Bruce?
Emily,
yes.
Emily and George raised a hand there.
Please, very, very short comment if you have, only 30 seconds because we are in our 5 last minutes. Please.
Oh, okay. I probably need like 2 or 3 minutes. So I was just going to make a comment about social media being a sort of like a way to disseminate a viral thought about Urantia. Just passing on your Facebook page a quote from the Urantia book, or something that's not political or insulting anybody, just something nice and sweet, which is a Urantia book quote. Emmy and I were in Italy in September, and I was thinking about all these people that crisscross their paths and bus, and roadside stops, elbow to elbow, trying to get their coffee and their gelato. And that's how if you can't be elbow to elbow with somebody or face to face, that social media is an amazing way that just makes connections that you can't imagine. Thanks.
Yes, I
Thanks, sir.
agree. Totally agree. It's wonderful. A wonderful tool. I use it a lot.
Yeah.
Do you want to say the last some close to this your presentation, Bruce?
No, I'm just thrilled to all get together in these difficult times and share whatever we can. I think that's great. It's a rare opportunity. So thanks, Jeannie, and everyone else.
Thanks to you, Bruce. Thank you very much. Well, we can have a 3 minutes break. So before we begin the next presentation, thank you very much.